Imagine, if you will, that we are stepping away from the noise of the present day. Leave behind the glowing screens, the humming refrigerators, and the endless notifications that demand your attention. Instead, let your mind drift backward, floating like a leaf on a slow-moving river, back through the centuries, back through the millennia. We are going to a place where the sun is a heavy, warm blanket made of gold, and the sand stretches out so far that it seems to swallow the horizon. We are going to Africa, but not the Africa of the news or the Africa of modern maps. We are going to the deep, ancient heart of history, to the kingdoms that time almost forgot, but which the sand still remembers. To start this journey, we have to talk about a river. Not just any river, but the longest, most patient river in the world, the Nile. Most people, when they think of the Nile, immediately picture the Great Sphinx or the towering pyramids of Giza. They think of Egypt, and that's fair. Egypt had a great PR team. But if you were to hop on a wooden boat, a felucca with a tall triangular white sail, and let the wind push you south, upriver against the current, you would eventually leave the Egypt of the textbooks behind. The air would get drier, the light would get sharper. The bustling cities would fade into quiet villages where the date palms sway in a rhythm that feels like a slow heartbeat. You would arrive in Nubia. Nubia is one of those names that sounds like a whisper. It occupied what is now southern Egypt and northern Sudan. It is a land of stark, breathtaking beauty, where the desert isn't just a lifeless void, but a canvas of shifting colors. Apricot at dawn, blinding white at noon, and a deep, bruising purple at twilight. It was here, thousands of years ago, that a civilization rose up to rival and at times even conquer their famous neighbors to the north. Let's sit here for a moment, metaphorically speaking, on the banks of the Nile in Nubia. The water here is dark and cool, moving with a strength that you can feel vibrating through the ground. It's a hypnotic sound, isn't it? The lap, lap, lap against the reeds. It's the sound of the earth breathing. In ancient times, they called this place Tarseti, which means the land of the bow. That's because the Nubians were such incredible archers that even the pharaohs of Egypt, who thought quite highly of themselves, would hire them as royal bodyguards. There's something charmingly ironic about that. Hiring your rivals to protect you because they're just that good. It would be like the New York Yankees hiring the Boston Red Sox to guard their dugout. But Nubia wasn't just a land of warriors, it was a land of gold. The very word nub meant gold in the ancient Egyptian language. Imagine the sheer amount of gold that flowed through these cities. Jewelry, breastplates, dust, and nuggets. It was so plentiful that it adorned the temples and the people with a casual elegance. Yet, as we settle into this story, we aren't looking for gold. We are looking for peace. The history of Nubia is a long, slow exhale. It spans thousands of years, but one of its most fascinating chapters is the Kingdom of Kush. The capital moved around a bit over the centuries, like a family trying to find the perfect spot for a picnic, eventually settling in a place called Meroe. If you were to visit Meroe today, or in your dreams tonight, you would see something that defies logic. You would see pyramids. Lots of them. In fact, there are more pyramids in Sudan than there are in Egypt. But these pyramids are different. They aren't the massive, hulking mountains of stone you see in Giza. The Nubian pyramids are smaller, steeper, and sharper. They puncture the sky like needles. there is something incredibly intimate about them. They feel personal. Standing among them, with the wind whistling softly through the gaps in the stone, you don't feel overwhelmed by the ego of a king. You feel the quiet reverence of a people who loved their land. They are clustered together, dozens of them, like a gathering of old friends who decided to spend eternity standing side by side. One of the most soothing things about history is realizing that despite all the wars and the noise, people have always just been people. In Meroe, they loved their cattle. They loved their pottery. They loved a good joke. They brewed beer and baked bread. The city was an industrial hub, famous for its iron working. At night, the glow of the iron forges would have looked like fireflies against the dark desert backdrop, a warm, rhythmic pulsing of light and heat. Clang, hiss, clang, hiss, a lullaby of creation. The rulers of Nubia were fascinating characters. There was Pai, the king who decided he'd had enough of the political chaos in Egypt. He marched north, conquered the whole lot of them, and established the 25th dynasty of Egypt. These were the Black Pharaohs. But Pai was an interesting fellow. He wasn't a bloodthirsty tyrant. He loved horses. In fact, when he conquered cities, he often got more upset if the enemy's horses had been mistreated than about anything else. He was the kind of guy who would stop a war to pet a dog. After conquering Egypt, rather than staying in the big palace in Memphis, he basically said, "Job done," and went back home to Nubia because he preferred the quiet. There is a deep, relatable tiredness in that decision. Sometimes you just want to go home to your own bed. And then there were the queens, the Candaces. If you've ever heard the name Candace, it comes from this ancient title. These women were formidable. They were warrior queens who led armies and negotiated with empires. One of them, a one-eyed queen named Amanirenas, even stared down the Roman Empire. The Romans, who were conquering everything in sight, came south, met Amanirenas, and eventually decided, you know what, let's just sign a peace treaty. It's too hot and she is too scary. There is a wonderful comfort in knowing that the greatest military machine of the ancient world was stopped by a determined woman in the desert. But the battles are long over now. The shouts of the Roman legions and the thrum of Nubian bowstrings have faded into the silence of the dunes. That is the gift of the past. It removes the urgency. We can look at these events like paintings in a museum. We can admire the colors and the drama without having to worry about the outcome. The outcome is already settled. The dust has settled. Let's drift further south, deeper into the heart of the kingdom. The Nile changes here. It passes through cataracts, sections of shallow, rocky rapids where the water churns and froths. It's nature's way of slowing things down, a natural speed bump. To navigate these waters, you had to be patient. You had to know the river like you knew the back of your hand. The Nubian boatmen would steer their craft with long poles, singing songs to keep the rhythm. Can you hear the low hum of their voices? A deep, resonant melody that blends with the splash of water. It's a sound that says, we are in no rush. We will get there when we get there. The architecture of Nubia reflected this relationship with the earth. They built immense temples, like the one at Jebel Barkal. This was a holy mountain, a massive sandstone mesa that looks a bit like a cobra rising up, if you squint and have a good imagination. They believed the god Amun lived inside the mountain. It's a nice thought. that God wasn't in the sky, but inside the rock, grounding the people, holding them steady. Inside the temples, the walls were covered in reliefs and carvings. But unlike the stiff, formal art of some ancient cultures, Nubian art often had a softness to it. The figures were fuller, healthier. They looked like they enjoyed a good meal. As the sun begins to set over the Nubian desert, the heat lifts. This is the most magical time. The sky turns a shade of blue that doesn't seem real, a deep, rich indigo. The stars don't just appear, they explode into existence. Without the light pollution of modern cities, the Milky Way looks like a spilled bucket of cream across the universe. The silence of the desert is heavy. It's not an empty silence, it's a full silence. It wraps around you like a heavy quilt. The sand, which has been baking all day, radiates a gentle warmth that rises up to meet the cooling air. It's nature's own central heating. Imagine lying back on that warm sand. It molds to the shape of your body, supporting every tired muscle. You are safe here. The ancient kings and queens are sleeping in their needle-like pyramids nearby. And the river is moving endlessly, tirelessly, carrying the water from the heart of Africa down to the sea. It has done this for millions of years, and it will do it for millions more. There is no pressure on you to do anything right now. The river has it handled. The kingdom of Nubia eventually faded, as all kingdoms do. The trade routes shifted, the sands encroached, and new powers rose. But it didn't disappear. It just went to sleep. The ruins are still there, standing stoically against the wind. The descendants of those people still live there, drinking tea with mint and looking out over the same river. It is a reminder that while names on maps change, the land endures. The rhythm continues. So, as we leave the banks of the Nubian Nile, we take with us the warmth of the sand and the coolness of the water. We leave behind the black pharaohs and the fierce Kandakes, letting them rest in the pages of history. We are drifting away now, the current taking us gently, slowly, moving us toward a new landscape. We are leaving the desert for something greener, something richer, something that glitters in the sun. We are heading west across the vast expanse of the Sahara toward a river of gold and a king who was richer than anyone who has ever lived. But for now, just let the image of those sharp, small pyramids linger in your mind, a row of perfect triangles against a purple sky, quiet, still, eternal. We are drifting again. We leave the cool, dark waters of the Nile and the sharp silhouettes of the Nubian pyramids behind us. We are moving west now, carried by a wind that smells of dry earth and distant rain. To get to our next destination, we must cross the greatest ocean on land, the Sahara. It is a vast, golden sea of silence. If you listen closely, you can hear the soft pad-pad-pad of camel hooves on the sand. They are the ships of this desert, swaying gently back and forth, a rocking motion that could lull anyone to sleep. After days, or perhaps weeks, time works differently here in the realm of stories. The endless beige of the desert begins to change. The sand turns to soil, a rich reddish brown. Tufts of green grass appear, waving hello in the breeze. Trees sprout from the earth, acacias with their flat tops looking like umbrellas, and the magnificent baobab trees. Have you ever seen a baobab? It looks as if a giant gardener, in a moment of whimsical confusion, plucked a tree out of the ground and planted it upside down, with its gnarled roots sticking up into the air. They are ancient, swollen with water, standing like silent guardians of the savannah. We have arrived in the medieval empire of Mali. If Nubia was the land of the bow, Mali was the land of gold. But unlike the stark desert, this is a land of vibrant life, fed by the great Niger River. The Niger is a curious river. It starts near the ocean, runs inland toward the desert as if it forgot something, and then makes a giant loop, the famous Niger Bend, before turning back to the sea. It was along this green, fertile curve that the Mali Empire flourished in the 13th and 14th centuries. The air here is warm and thick, smelling of roasted peanuts and wood smoke. It is a comfortable warmth, the kind that loosens your shoulders and makes your eyelids feel pleasantly heavy. In the center of this empire sits a figure so wealthy that history still hasn't quite figured out how to calculate his net worth. His name was Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa is the sort of historical figure who seems like a tall tale. In 1324, he decided to go on a pilgrimage, a trip from Mali all the way to Mecca. Now, when most of us pack for a trip, we worry about whether we brought enough socks or if our suitcase is 2 pounds overweight. Mansa Musa did not have this problem. He brought a caravan that stretched as far as the eye could see. There were 60,000 people, soldiers, entertainers, merchants, and camel drivers. It was a moving city. And the gold. Oh, the gold. It is said he brought dozens of camels, each carrying hundreds of pounds of gold dust. He handed it out like candy. He gave it to the poor. He gave it to local officials. He probably gave it to people just for giving him good directions. In fact, he was so generous that when he passed through Cairo, he gave away so much gold that he accidentally crashed the economy. He caused hyperinflation just by being nice. The value of gold plummeted for a decade because he had flooded the market. It's a hilarious thought, ruining an economy not by war or famine, but by tipping too much. Oops, one can imagine him saying. My apologies, I didn't realize I was that rich. But let's step away from the dazzling glint of gold for a moment. Wealth is loud, but the true soul of Mali was quiet. It was found in the mind. Follow the river north to the edge of the desert, and you will find Timbuktu. Today, we use Timbuktu as a punchline, a shorthand for the most remote place on earth. If you lose your keys, you might say, I searched from here to Timbuktu. But in the 14th century, Timbuktu wasn't the middle of nowhere. It was the center of everything. It was the Oxford, the Harvard, the Paris of Africa. While Europe was busy fighting messy wars and struggling through the Middle Ages, the scholars of Timbuktu were sitting in cool mud brick courtyards, studying astronomy, mathematics, law, and philosophy. The city was home to the University of Sankore. Imagine the sound of this place. No clanging swords, no shouting merchants, just the soft scratching of reed pens on parchment, the rustle of turning pages, the low murmur of debate and discussion. Books were the most valuable commodity here, more precious than the gold dust that bought them. There is something deeply soothing about a culture that prized a library above a treasury. Imagine walking into one of these ancient libraries. The air smells of old paper, leather bindings, and dried ink. It is a dusty, comforting smell. It smells like wisdom. You can run your hand along the shelves, feeling the weight of centuries of knowledge resting there, waiting patiently. The architecture of this region is also designed to soothe. They didn't build with cold, hard stone. They built with the earth itself. The great mosque of Djenné is the largest mud brick building in the world, and it is a masterpiece of softness. It has no sharp corners. Everything is rounded, smoothed by human hands. The building looks like it grew out of the ground, organic and warm. Wooden beams stick out of the walls, giving it a texture like a prickly pear cactus. But these beams have a purpose. Every year, after the rains wash away some of the mud, the community gathers. They climb these beams like scaffolding and replaster the mosque with fresh mud. It's not a chore, it's a festival. Children play in the mud. Musicians play drums and flutes, and the whole city works together to heal the building. It's a beautiful cycle of renewal. They accept that the rain will come, that things will wash away, and that they will simply rebuild it together. There is no fight against nature here, only a dance with it. Wash away, build up, wash away, build up. A rhythm as steady as breathing. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon in Mali, the savannah transforms. The heat of the day evaporates, leaving a crisp, cool air that feels wonderful against the skin. The sky turns a soft shade of pink, then orange, then a deep, velvety blue. The silhouette of the baobab trees stands black against the twilight. This is the time for the griots. The griots are the storytellers, the keepers of memory. In a land where history wasn't always written down, it was sung. The griot would sit by the fire, cradling an instrument called the kora. The kora is a beautiful thing, a harp lute made from a large calabash gourd and cowskin with 21 strings. When played, it sounds like water flowing over pebbles. It is a cascading, gentle sound, intricate and hypnotic. Pluck, shimmer, pluck, shimmer. The griot begins to sing, not just of kings like Mansa Musa, but of ancestors, of the harvest, of the stars. The voice is low and melodic. It is said that when a griot dies, it is as if a library has burned down. But tonight, the library is open. The stories float up into the night sky, mingling with the smoke from the fire. The listeners lean in, their faces illuminated by the flickering orange light. There is no TV to distract them, no phones to check. There is only the voice, the music, and the vast, open African night. The animals of the savannah are settling down too. The birds have tucked their heads under their wings. The great herds of antelope have found a safe spot to rest. The world is slowing down. The mighty Niger River continues its slow glide toward the ocean, shimmering like liquid moonlight. It carries the secrets of the empire, the gold, the books, the mud, and the music, downstream, whispering them to the reeds along the banks. The Mali Empire eventually fragmented, as all things do, giving way to the Songhai and others. But the peace of Timbuktu remains. The manuscripts are still there, hidden in trunks and buried in walls, safe in the dark. The mud mosque of Djenné still stands, waiting for the next rain, waiting for the next festival. The roots of the baobab trees still grip the earth deep, deep down. We are leaving the savannah now. The fire has burned down to glowing embers. The kora music is fading into a soft echo. We are drifting southeast, away from the open plains and the river of gold. We are heading toward a place of mystery, a place of stone, hidden in the high plateaus of southern Africa. A place where the walls were built without mortar, standing tall simply because the stones fit together perfectly, like a puzzle solved long ago. But before we go, take one last look at the Mali night. The stars are so bright they look like spilled salt on a dark tablecloth. The earth is warm. The river is calm. All is well. We are on the move again, But this time, let's travel on the wind. We leave behind the warm, dusty embrace of Mali and the golden savanna. We are drifting south, far south. The air changes as we travel. It loses the humidity of the river valleys and gains a crisp, clean edge. We are rising in elevation, up onto the high plateaus of southern Africa. The earth here is different. It feels ancient in a way that is hard to describe, as if the bones of the planet are just beneath the surface. We have arrived in the land that is today known as Zimbabwe. The name itself is a whisper from the past. In the Shona language, Zimba Dzamabwe means house of stone. And as the mist clears from the rolling hills, you see why. The landscape here is dotted with kopjes, pronounced copies. These are massive piles of granite boulders that look as if a giant child was playing with marbles and then wandered off for a nap, leaving them stacked in precarious, gravity-defying heaps. They are beautiful, sculpted by wind and rain over millions of years into smooth, rounded shapes. But nestled among these natural rock formations lies something man-made, something that mirrors the strength of the earth itself, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe. Imagine standing before a wall, but not a brick wall and not a wooden fence. This is a wall of grey granite blocks, millions of them. And here is the miracle. There is no mortar, there is no cement, no glue, nothing holding them together but gravity and the genius of the human hand. This is dry stone architecture at its absolute finest. The builders of this city, the ancestors of the Shona people, cut the granite into neat, brick-like shapes and stacked them with such precision that a credit card couldn't fit between them. They have stood this way for hundreds of years. There is something deeply soothing about that concept. Things fitting together so perfectly that they don't need anything artificial to hold them up. They just rest there, heavy and secure. It is the architectural equivalent of a deep, trusting exhale. Let's walk toward the great enclosure. It is the largest ancient structure south of the Sahara. The outer wall curves gently, organic and flowing like a river of stone. It rises up to 36 feet high, that's taller than a 3-story building, and is 20 feet thick at the base. It is a fortress of solitude. As you step inside, the world falls silent. The wind, which was whipping through the tall grass outside, is blocked by the massive walls. The air inside is still and cool, preserved in a perpetual shadow. You are entering the parallel passage. This is a narrow corridor between 2 towering stone walls. It's tight, but not claustrophobic. It feels like a hug. It feels like being tucked in. Walk slowly down this passage. Run your fingertips along the cool, rough surface of the granite. Scritch, scratch. The stone has absorbed the heat of the day and the cold of the night for centuries. It is solid. It is unmoving. In a world where everything changes so fast, where phones buzz and traffic moves, these stones have not budged an inch since the Middle Ages. They are the definition of patience. At the heart of the enclosure stands the conical tower. It looks like a traditional grain silo, but solid stone. Historians and archaeologists have spent years arguing over what it is. Is it a symbol of the king's power? Is it a religious altar? Is it a giant representation of a grain bin to symbolize abundance? The truth is, nobody knows for sure. And isn't that wonderful? We don't have to know. We can just look at it. It is a beautiful round shape, tapering toward the top, simple and elegant. It keeps its secrets. It doesn't feel the need to explain itself to you, and you don't need to analyze it. You can just share the silence with it. Great Zimbabwe was once a bustling metropolis, home to nearly 20,000 people. It was a hub of trade that connected this remote plateau to the rest of the world. Archaeologists digging in the dirt here have found some incredible things. Colored glass beads from Persia, coins from Kilwa, and shards of blue and white porcelain from Ming Dynasty China. Pause on that image for a moment. A ceramic plate made by a potter in China traveled thousands of miles across the ocean on a wooden ship, was carried by traders along the coast of East Africa, and then hiked inland to this granite city in the highlands. It is a testament to how connected we have always been. But now, the noise of that trade is gone. The shouting merchants, the clinking of gold jewelry, the mooing of the vast cattle herds, it has all faded. For a long time, when European explorers first stumbled upon these ruins in the 19th century, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. They looked at these magnificent walls and said, "Surely Africans couldn't have built this." They came up with wild theories. They said it must have been the Queen of Sheba's palace, or a lost city of the Phoenicians, or King Solomon's mines. They tried to give credit to anyone else. It's almost funny, looking back at it, the lengths people will go to deny the obvious. The local Shona people were essentially standing there saying, "Actually, our ancestors built this." And the explorers were looking past them, searching for invisible Romans. But the stones don't care about the confusion of explorers. They know who placed them there. They hold the memory of the hands that shaped them. As twilight descends on the plateau, the atmosphere shifts again. The high-veld sky is famous for its clarity. As the sun sinks, the granite rocks turn a deep, bruising purple, then a soft grey. The shadows lengthen and merge until the great enclosure is just a silhouette against the stars. And the stars here. The Southern Cross hangs low and bright, a diamond kite watching over the sleeping continent. It gets chilly here at night. It's the kind of chill that makes you want to wrap a heavy wool blanket around your shoulders. Imagine sitting by a small fire near the ruins. The smoke rises straight up in the still air. You can hear the sounds of the African night, the chirping of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, perhaps the call of a nightjar, which sounds like a mesmerizing repetitive chirp. The mystery of Great Zimbabwe isn't a scary mystery. It's a comforting one. It's the mystery of a civilization that rose, flourished, and then simply moved on. They didn't disappear in a cataclysm. The land eventually got tired, the resources ran low, and the people, being sensible, packed up and moved to new pastures. They left their house of stone behind as a monument, a gift to the future. There is a profound peace in the idea of moving on. Sometimes we hold on to things too tightly. Jobs, worries, old arguments. We think the walls will fall down if we leave. But the people of Great Zimbabwe knew when it was time to go. They let the walls stand and they walked away to find greener grass. They let go. The soapstone birds found in the ruins are the most famous symbols of this place. They are carved figures of birds with human features sitting atop columns. 8 of them were found, and today they are the national emblem of the country. In the dark, you can imagine them perched on the walls, their stone eyes wide, watching the passage of time. They are the guardians of sleep. They don't blink. They don't sleep, so you can. They are taking the night shift. The mist is rolling in now, hugging the base of the hills. It wraps around the base of the great enclosure like a soft white scarf. The world is disappearing, soft edge by soft edge. The granite blocks are settling in for another night, just as they have for 700 years. They are heavy, cool, and completely at rest. You are safe here, grounded by the weight of the stone. The history of this place is a blanket of time, covering you, keeping you warm. The trade routes are closed for the night. The porters have put down their loads. The kings have laid down their heads. The mystery can wait until morning. We leave the high plateau now. We leave the Southern Cross hanging in the sky and the stone birds on their perch. We are drifting again, moving north and west toward the coast. We are leaving the dry, crisp air of the highlands for something thicker, greener, and more humid. We are going to the deep rainforests. We are going to a place where the history is cast in bronze and hidden behind great earthworks. But for now, let the image of that perfect, mortarless wall stay with you. Each stone finding its place, each stone resting on the other, perfectly balanced, perfectly still. We are drifting away from the high, star-filled plateaus of the south. We leave the cool granite of Great Zimbabwe behind, letting it fade into the mist. We are moving northwest now, carried on a breeze that is growing warmer, heavier, and richer. We are heading toward the curve of the continent's underbelly, to the deep, lush rainforests of what is now southern Nigeria. As we descend, the air changes completely. It becomes a physical embrace. This is the rainforest. It is a world of overwhelming green, emerald, jade, olive, lime. The canopy above is so thick that the sunlight filters down in dappled pools, soft and diffused. You can smell the life here. It smells of wet earth, of crushing leaves, of sweet fruit fermenting on the forest floor, and of rain. Always there is the scent of rain, either the rain that has just fallen or the rain that is about to fall. We have arrived at the Kingdom of Benin. Now, a quick clarifying point for our weary travellers. This is not the modern country of Benin. That's next door. History, in its infinite sense of humour, likes to make geography confusing just to keep us on our toes. The Kingdom of Benin was the home of the Edo people, a civilization nestled deep in the forest, protected not by stone, but by the earth itself. If you were to approach Benin City in its golden age, around the 15th or 16th century, you wouldn't see a castle rising above the trees. You would see walls. But these weren't the sharp, jagged walls of a fortress. They were mounds, massive, rolling, protective ridges of earth. These are the walls of Benin. And walls is perhaps too small a word. This was a system of earthworks that stretched for nearly 10,000 miles. It was a honeycomb of boundaries and ramparts, enclosing communities, farms, and the great city itself. It is said to be one of the largest man-made structures on the planet, containing more material than the Great Pyramid of Giza. And yet, it was built by hand, bucket by bucket, shovel by shovel. There is something incredibly grounding about an earth wall. Stone feels permanent and cold, but earth feels warm and living. The walls were covered in moss and grass, blending into the forest. To enter the city, you walked through great wooden gates. As you passed through, the chaos of the jungle fell away. Benin City was a marvel of order. In a time when London was a maze of muddy, twisting alleyways, Benin was laid out in a grid. The streets were broad and straight, sweeping avenues that seemed to go on forever. The houses were neat, with polished clay walls that shone like mirrors. It was a clean, meticulous place. The Dutch explorers who visited in the 1600s were baffled. They wrote home saying, "The streets are so wide you can drive a chariot down them," which is high praise from people who were used to walking through the cramped streets of Amsterdam. At night, the city glowed. They had street lights, great palm oil lamps mounted on pillars that cast a warm, flickering amber light across the avenues. Imagine walking down one of these wide, red earth streets in the evening. The air is thick and warm, like a heavy blanket. The palm oil lamps sputter softly, hiss-pop, creating dancing shadows. The city is quiet, save for the rhythmic croaking of frogs in the distance and the soft murmur of families inside their courtyards. But the true soul of Benin wasn't in the walls or the streets. It was in the bronze. In the heart of the city lived the Guild of Brass Casters. These were artists who worked with a material that looked like liquid fire. They created the famous Benin bronzes, plaques and statues that are so detailed, so lifelike, they seem ready to speak. The process of making these bronzes is a lesson in patience. It is called the lost wax technique, and it cannot be rushed. First, the artist creates a model out of clay. He smooths it with his thumbs, shaping the nose of a king or the whiskers of a leopard. It is quiet work. Then, he covers the clay in a layer of beeswax. This is where the detail happens. He carves into the soft wax, every bead of a necklace, every braid of hair, every texture of fabric. Once the wax is perfect, it is covered in another layer of clay and baked in a fire. The wax melts and runs away. It becomes lost, leaving a hollow space inside the clay. Then molten brass or bronze is poured into that space. Finally, when it cools, the outer clay is smashed away to reveal the metal treasure inside. Think of the rhythm of this work. Mold, cover, carve, bake, pour, cool. It is a slow, hypnotic cycle. The artists worked in a special district, the sound of their hammers ringing out like bells. Tink, tink, tink. They weren't just making art, they were writing history. The Kingdom of Benin didn't use paper books to record their past. They used bronze. The plaques hung on the pillars of the Oba's palace, telling the stories of battles, of ceremonies, of the ancestors. It was a library of metal shimmering in the sunlight. And then there was the Oba himself, the king. In Benin, the Oba was more than a ruler. He was a divine figure. He was the leopard of the house. On ceremonial days, he would appear wearing regalia made entirely of red coral beads. Imagine the weight of that. A tunic, a crown, bracelets, anklets, all made of heavy, polished coral stone. The Oba moved slowly, with immense dignity. He couldn't rush if he wanted to. The weight of the coral grounded him to the earth. When he walked, the beads would click together. Clack, 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 clack. A sound of authority, a sound of presence. The coral represented the power of the ocean, brought deep into the forest. It was a reminder that the kingdom was connected to the wider world, to the Portuguese traders who arrived on their ships, bringing the coral from the Mediterranean. But let's step back from the palace now. Let's drift into the ordinary night of the rainforest. The rain is starting to fall. In the rainforest, rain isn't a nuisance. It's a lullaby. It starts as a whisper high in the canopy, a million drops hitting a million leaves. Shh, shh. Then it grows louder, a steady, rhythmic drumming. The water drips from the broad leaves of the plantains, taps against the thatched roofs of the houses, and turns the red earth of the streets into a soft, dark paste. The air cools down instantly. The humidity breaks. Inside the houses, People are sleeping on mats woven from reeds. The courtyards are open to the sky, collecting the rainwater in large cisterns. The sound of water filling the cisterns is a deep, resonant plop, plop, plop. It is the sound of abundance. The forest provides everything: the wood for the fire, the clay for the walls, the fruit for the table, the water for the jar. There is no need to worry about tomorrow. The forest will still be there. The insects of the night begin their chorus. It is a wall of sound: crickets, cicadas, tree frogs. But it is not a noise that keeps you awake. It is white noise. It is a sonic shield that blocks out everything else. It wraps around you. It says, "You are hidden. You are safe." The walls of Benin, those great moss-covered mounds, stand guard in the darkness. They are silent sentinels. They have been there for centuries, slowly settling, slowly becoming part of the landscape. They hold the city in a cupped hand. As you lie there in the imaginary courtyard, listening to the rain, you can visualize the bronze plaques in the palace. In the dim light, the metal faces of the ancestors seem to soften. The bronze leopards, with their bared teeth, are just big cats keeping watch. The history is written, the metal has cooled, and the story is set. The lost wax method is a beautiful metaphor for sleep, isn't it? You take the busyness of the day, the wax, and you let it melt away in the warmth of the night. You let it run out until there is just a hollow space, a quiet space. And then sleep pours in to fill the mold, heavy and solid and golden. The rain is easing off now. It's just a gentle dripping. Drip, drop. The smell of wet earth is stronger than ever. It is the smell of growth, of roots drinking deep. The forest breathes in, and the forest breathes out. We are safe within the walls. The ober is resting under the weight of his coral. The bronze casters have put down their tools. The lamps are flickering low. We must leave the forest now, though it is hard to leave such a comforting embrace. The humidity clings to us, but we are moving on. We are heading east again, across the continent, toward the highlands of the Horn of Africa. We are going to a place where the earth wasn't built up into walls, but carved down into miracles. We are going to the rooftop of Africa, where churches were chiseled out of solid rock, hiding in the ground like secrets. But take a moment to breathe in the forest air one last time. Deep and green. The lungs of the world are breathing with you, in and out. We are ascending now. We leave behind the humid, enveloping warmth of the West African rainforests and the rhythmic dripping of the jungle leaves. We are traveling east, crossing the continent, and as we do, the ground beneath us begins to rise. Higher and higher we go, until the air turns crisp and thin, filling our lungs with a cool, clean sharpness that wakes up the senses in the most gentle way. We have arrived at the roof of Africa. We are in the Ethiopian highlands. This is a landscape of drama and silence. Imagine vast, emerald green plateaus that end abruptly in sheer cliffs, dropping thousands of feet into misty valleys below. It looks like the world has been cracked open. Clouds don't float above you here. Often, they float beside you or even below you, drifting through the canyons like lazy rivers of white cotton. It is a place that feels closer to the sky than the earth. If you were to sit on the edge of one of these cliffs, safely, of course, with a warm blanket wrapped around you, you might see a troop of Galada baboons grazing nearby. They are magnificent creatures with golden manes that blow in the wind, looking like little lions. They are the only monkeys in the world that graze on grass like cows. They sit peacefully, plucking blades of grass, chatting to each other in low grunts and shuffles. There is no predator chasing them here, just the wind, the grass, and the endless view. Ethiopia is old, not just grandparents old, or even ancient Rome old. It is cradle of humanity old. It is one of the oldest nations in the world, a place where history is woven so tightly into the fabric of daily life that you can't tell where the past ends and the present begins. Long before the medieval era we are visiting, there was the kingdom of Aksum. It was a trading giant, a link between the Roman Empire and India. They built massive stone obelisks, towering needles of granite that still stand today, pointing accusations at the clouds. It is said that the Queen of Sheba ruled here, and that the Ark of the Covenant, the actual box containing the Ten Commandments, was brought here for safekeeping. Whether that is true or not is beside the point. The point is the feeling of the place. It feels like a vault. It feels like a place where secrets go to be safe. But our destination is a little further south, in the town of Lalibela. It is the 12th century. King Lalibela has a vision. He wants to build a new Jerusalem right here in the African mountains, so his people don't have to make the dangerous journey to the Middle East. Now, usually when you build a church or a temple, you start with a flat piece of ground. You bring in stone, wood and mortar, and you build up layer by layer, reaching for the heavens. King Lalibela did the exact opposite. He built down. The rock-hewn churches of Lalibela are not constructed, they are excavated. Imagine standing on a flat expanse of pink volcanic rock. You look down, and there, cut deep into the solid stone, is a perfect, intricate building. It is a sculpture on an architectural scale. The workers didn't use bricks. They used hammers and chisels. They had to visualize the entire building, the columns, the windows, the stairs, the drainage ditches, before they even started. They had to carve the negative space. They removed the rock that wasn't the church. Think about the patience that requires. If a mason in Europe made a mistake while building a cathedral, he could just throw away the brick and get a new one. Whoops, pass me another stone. But here, if you chip off the wrong piece of rock, that's it. You can't glue it back on. There is no undo button in volcanic tuff. You have to be perfect. Legend says that the men worked all day, and at night, while they slept, angels came down and continued the work, doing twice as much as the humans. It's a lovely thought to drift off to. The idea that while you rest, something benevolent is helping you finish your tasks. The universe is picking up the slack. Let's visit the most famous of them all, Bet Georgis, the Church of St. George. From the surface, all you see is the roof, a perfect Greek cross carved into the ground, level with your feet. It is covered in lichen, a soft, mottled orange and grey. To enter, you have to walk down a narrow trench cut into the rock. The walls rise up around you, shutting out the wind, shutting out the view of the mountains. The world narrows down to just the stone and the path. It is a descent into the earth's embrace. The air gets cooler as you go deeper. It smells of damp stone and history. When you reach the bottom, you are standing in a courtyard, looking up at a building that is technically part of the mountain. It is monolith, one single piece of stone. Run your hand against the wall. It is rough and cool. It feels eternal. It has weathered rain and sun for 900 years, and it hasn't moved an inch. Inside the church, it is dark and quiet. The windows are small, letting in thin beams of light that dance with dust motes. The floor is covered in old carpets, worn soft by the feet of pilgrims. There are curtains hiding the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctuary. Listen. Can you hear the sound of the chanting? The priests here, called debteras, sing in an ancient language called Ge'ez. It is a rhythmic, low-frequency sound that resonates in your chest. They use instruments, large drums that beat like a slow heart, boom, 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 and sistrums, which are small metal rattles that make a gentle ching sound like rain on a tin roof. The air is thick with the smell of frankincense. Ethiopia is the land of frankincense. The resin burns in brass censers, releasing a smoke that is sweet, woody, and spicy. It is a heavy scent, a scent that makes your eyelids feel heavy. It swirls around the stone columns, curling up into the shadowed ceiling. There is no rush here. The service might last for hours. The pilgrims, wrapped in white cotton robes called gabi, lean against the walls or sit on the floor. The white robes glow softly in the dim light, looking like ghosts or angels. Everyone is waiting, but they aren't waiting for anything. They are just being. Outside, the sun begins to set over the highlands. The temperature drops quickly. The mountains turn a deep shade of purple, then blue, then black. The mist rolls into the valleys, filling them up like bowls of milk. This is a land of shepherds. As the light fails, you might hear the distant sound of a flute. A shepherd is calling his flock home. The sheep and goats bleat softly, their bells tinkling in the twilight. Clink, clank, clink, clank. They are moving to safety, to the warmth of the enclosure. In the village of Lalibela, the fires are lit. The smell of baking injera, the spongy, sour bread that is the staple of every meal, wafts through the air. It is a comforting, yeasty smell. Families gather around the basket tables. They break bread together. They share stories. But back at the rock churches, the silence has returned. The tourists are gone. The pilgrims have curled up in the nooks and crannies of the stone courtyard to sleep. They believe that sleeping near the church brings a blessing. They are wrapped in their white shawls, looking like bundles of clouds resting on the rock. The stone walls retain the heat of the day, radiating a gentle warmth back into the cool night air. The Church of St. George stands in its pit, a cross of shadow. It is protected from the wind. It is hidden from the world. There is a profound sense of security in being underground. You are sheltered. The earth is thicker than any blanket. The storms can rage above. The winds can howl across the plateau. But down here, in the cut stone, it is still. The hyenas might call in the distance, a strange, whooping laugh that echoes off the cliffs. But they are far away. Here, there is only the smell of incense fading into the night and the millions of stars overhead. Because the air is so thin and the cities are so few, the stars in the Ethiopian highlands are aggressively bright. They look like holes punched in the fabric of the night, letting the light of heaven shine through. We can rest here for a moment in the New Jerusalem. We can let the chanting of the priests fade into a memory. We can let the cool stones soothe our minds. We have been to the desert, the savannah, the rainforest, and now the mountains. We have seen walls of earth and walls of granite. But our journey is not quite over. We have one last leg to travel. We must descend from the high peaks. We must follow the water. We are going to the edge of the continent, where the land meets the Indian Ocean. We are going to a place of trade, of spices and of sails. We are going to the Swahili Coast. So, wrap your gabi tighter around your shoulders. The mountain air is cold, but the rock is warm. Close your eyes and imagine the sound of the chisel. Chip, chip, chip. Slowly, patiently, carving a safe space out of the hard world. We have come a long way, you and I. We have drifted down the Nile, crossed the golden sands of the Sahara, walked the wide avenues of Benin, touched the granite of Zimbabwe, and hidden in the rock churches of the highlands. Now it is time to come down from the mountains. It is time to find the edge of the world. We are traveling east, dropping in elevation, leaving the thin, crisp air behind. The landscape flattens and warms. The air grows heavy again, but this time it carries a new scent. It is the smell of salt. It is the smell of iodine and seaweed. It is the smell of the Indian Ocean. We have arrived at the Swahili Coast. This is a ribbon of land that stretches all the way from Somalia in the north down to Mozambique in the south. It is a place where Africa meets the world. For thousands of years, this coast has been a handshake between continents. The ocean here is not a barrier, it is a highway. The water of the Indian Ocean is different from other oceans. It feels warmer, silkier. In the shallows, it is a translucent turquoise, so clear you can see the white sand rippling on the bottom. Further out, it deepens to a rich sapphire blue. It moves with a gentle, rolling rhythm, a perpetual lullaby that has rocked this coast to sleep for eons. The heartbeat of the Swahili Coast is the wind, specifically the monsoon winds. These winds are the clock by which history was set. From November to March, the Kaskazi wind blows from the northeast, pushing ships from India, Persia, and Arabia toward Africa. Then, from April to October, the Kusi wind blows from the south, pushing them back home. You couldn't rush this. If you missed the wind, you stayed. You waited. This natural rhythm forced people to slow down, to live together, to learn each other's languages. It created a culture of patience and hospitality. The Swahili culture itself is a beautiful tapestry woven from African, Arab, Persian, and Indian threads. Even the language, Kiswahili, is a musical blend, a language made for trading, for poetry, and for song. Let's walk through the narrow, winding streets of a place like Lamu, or Stone Town in Zanzibar. These are towns built of coral. The builders cut blocks of coral stone from the sea, let them bleach white in the sun, and built their homes. There is something magical about living in a house made of the ocean. The walls are thick and white, reflecting the heat, keeping the interiors cool and shadowed. There are no cars here. The streets are too narrow, designed only for pedestrians and donkeys. The silence is profound. You don't hear engines or horns. You hear the clip-clop of donkey hooves on the cobblestones. You hear the rustle of palm fronds. You hear the low murmur of neighbors chatting on barazas, stone benches built onto the front of the houses. The baraza is a symbol of Swahili life. It is a place to sit, to watch the world go by, to do absolutely nothing. It is an architectural invitation to rest. As you walk, you pass the famous doors of Zanzibar. These are massive, heavy wooden doors, carved with intricate designs. Some have brass studs, a tradition from India originally meant to stop war elephants from battering them down. Here, there are no war elephants, just the memory of them. The studs are now just decoration, glinting in the lantern light. The carvings tell stories: waves for the sea, vines for the spice trade, geometric patterns for unity. A heavy door is a comforting thing. It closes with a solid, reassuring thud, shutting out the world, keeping the sanctity of the homes safe. And the smells. The air here is heavy with spices. This is the Spice Coast, after all. You can smell cloves, a sweet, numbing, warm scent that hangs in the air like a fog. You smell cinnamon, cardamom, vanilla, and nutmeg. It smells like a kitchen at Christmas, but tropical and humid. It is a scent that makes you feel full, warm, and drowsy. Let's go down to the harbour as the sun begins to set. The sky turns a soft, bruised purple, melting into the orange of the horizon. The water catches the colours, turning into a sheet of liquid metal. Bobbing in the water are the dhows. These are the ancient sailing vessels of the coast, unchanged for 2,000 years. They are made of wood, often mangrove timber, which is resistant to salt and worms. They have a distinct shape, long and thin, with a sharp bow that cuts through the waves. But it is the sail that captivates you, the lateen sail. It is a large triangular canvas that catches the wind with grace. When you see a fleet of dhows on the horizon, their white sails glowing against the blue sky, they look like shark fins, or perhaps like birds winging their way home. Imagine stepping onto one of these wooden boats. The wood is smooth and worn by salt and time. It creaks softly as it rocks on the gentle swells. Creak, splash, creak, splash. The captain unties the rope. There is no roaring engine to start. There is only the sound of the canvas snapping taut as it catches the evening breeze. The boat begins to move. It doesn't lurch, it glides. It cuts through the water with a hiss. You lie back on the cushioned deck, looking up at the mast. The wood groans rhythmically, a sound that has comforted sailors since the days of the pharaohs. We drift out of the harbour, past the white coral houses that are now turning blue in the twilight. The sounds of the town fade away. The call to prayer from the minarets drifts over the water, a haunting, melodic sound that blends with the wind. Then, silence, just the wind and the water. The Indian Ocean is a cradle. It holds you. As night falls, the water turns black, merging with the sky. The horizon disappears. You are floating in a void of stars. The stars above are mirrored in the water below, so it feels as if you are drifting through space. The Southern Cross is there again, your old friend from Zimbabwe. The Milky Way is a river of light, mirroring the Nile we started on. This journey has been a circle. We started with a river, and we end with a sea. Think back to the things we have seen. Let them drift through your mind like a slow montage. See the sharp, small pyramids of Nubia, standing silent in the desert sand. See the golden caravans of Mali, moving slowly across the savannah, the dust swirling in the light. See the granite walls of Great Zimbabwe, the stones resting perfectly on one another without mortar, heavy and balanced. See the deep green rainforest of Benin, the rain dripping from the leaves, the bronze faces watching from the shadows. See the rock-hewn churches of Ethiopia, carved down into the earth, safe and hidden, filled with the smell of frankincense. And now, feel the gentle rocking of the dhow on the Swahili Coast. The history of Africa is not just a history of kings and wars. It is a history of the earth. It is the sand, the river, the rock, the forest, the mountain, and the sea. It is a history of endurance. These kingdoms rose and fell, but the land remains. The rhythm remains. The dhow is sailing further out now. The land is just a dark line behind us. The only light comes from the moon, a sliver of silver hanging in the sky. The motion of the boat is hypnotic. Up and down, a gentle swaying that matches your breathing. Inhale, and the boat rises. Exhale, and the boat falls. You are part of this rhythm now. You are part of the story. The worries of your modern life are very far away. They are back on the shore, left behind in the noise of the day. Out here, there is nothing to do. The wind is steering the boat. The stars are navigating. You are simply a passenger. The water laps against the wood of the hull. Lap, lap, lap. It is the heartbeat of the planet. It is telling you that it is okay to let go. It is okay to rest. The world will keep turning without your help. The tides will come in and go out. The sun will rise again tomorrow over the ocean, just as it has for millions of years. But for now, it is the time of the moon. It is the time of the heavy eyelids. The air is warm and smells of salt and cloves. The cushions are soft. The darkness is a velvet blanket. Drift along the coast. Let the current take you. There is no destination anymore. The journey is the destination, and the journey is done. The forgotten kingdoms are not forgotten. They are sleeping. And now, so are you. The water is calm. The wind is a whisper. The night is still. Sleep.